Welcome. Today we're going to talk about this book here called The Devil's Curve by Arno Kopecky. This is about a place called the Devil's Curve in Peru, and the indigenous people of Peru blocked it because they didn't want the Amazon used, specifically by Canadian interests, Canadian companies. And Arno Kopecky dove into South America and what was going on there with mainly with Canadian interests, but with North American, with businesses and what they were doing to the Amazon and what they were doing to the indigenous peoples of Peru, Colombia, Bolivia, a bunch of other spots in that area. Before we dive into that book, though, a couple ways to support the channel. Number one, you become a YouTube member. YouTube members are getting some videos free. And then actually I'm going to be probably doing some director's commentary on some of the, the big idea videos that I have coming up. You can also, what else can you do? You can join Discord. There'll be links to that below. You can take one of my courses on Skillshare. You can go to curtismchale.ca/Skillshare. What you might be most interested in is my one on Zettelkasten, which is really the system I use to take all the notes on books and do all the thinking I do. So without further ado, let's look at The Devil's Curve by Arno Kopecky. All right. So in this book, Kopecky looks at the death of Peruvian natives, indigenous peoples, at the hands of the local police. And the local police are there because the Peruvian indigenous peoples shut down the highway, the main north-south, I think it's north-south, and main traffic way that importing, exporting, all the stuff goes through. That all the import exports, and that really involves a bunch of companies, mainly in Canada. And Arno Kopecky is a Canadian, or he's writing from a Canadian perspective. I'm not sure if he's actually a Canadian or if he's just writing from a Canadian perspective, but we'll say Canadian. And he was looking at the amount of, or how complicit is Canada, the Canadian government, in some of these acts of violence because the companies we have are there, because the companies that are from our country are there. So in short, Canada does not come out looking very good. There's a 2010 report Kopecky cites from, let me look it up, from the government that basically says, as Canada signs the agreement with free trade with Colombia, then we are complicit in the violence in Colombia because basically it happens at our hands at the request of the the companies that are there, right? The companies that are mining gold, the companies that are extracting resources from there. So I'd love to say that this is, I don't even want to love to say it. Maybe I could say that this only happens in, countries that aren't Canada, like in other countries. But the truth is we're seeing a lot of this happen now, where a white conceit really believes that indigenous uses of land are not good uses, or not uses that we really want to go for because they're not white people uses. We see this in Fairy Creek right now, as the RCMP, right, Canadian National Police, are continuing to extract journalists, even though they're told by court ruling literally this year that they're not allowed to do that, and not let them see the arrests that are happening at Fairy Creek. And they are being very aggressive when journalists are not present. Like, this is a constant thing. We saw it earlier. We've heard about it earlier this year over out east with the Mi'kmaq fishermen. And again, getting back to the color of law, which I talked about in a previous video, where police stood side by side to the side while white people, wrecked black people's houses. We saw this in the Mi'kmaq fishermen having their buildings burned down while the police really did nothing for it, right? So then the federal government is actually complicit in this racist act. This racist act. So how did I finish this book? I finished this book, and so it's memoir, investigative journalism, and he talks a lot about his experience there, meeting the people, right? He, what does he drink? He drinks like their spiritual drink to, gain better insight into himself. It's drugs, basically, an orally ingested drug. He talks about meeting the cities and the danger in the cities, and how the Peruvian government is supposed to pay for the relocation of these people, of the indigenous peoples, how they're supposed to pay them regularly for it, and they just don't ever get to it. He also says that, how would they ever actually do it? There's literally not enough money to do it. He talks about Canadian mining companies, or mining companies using chemical slurries to extract gold, from dirt and wrecking large swaths of environment. So when I came out of this, I kept thinking that Canada, probably North America, really campaigns hard for lifting environmental restrictions, which you cited in here, in other countries that we would never allow lifted in our own. Like, we wouldn't allow this type of environmental destruction in our own country, but because it's some Indigenous person somewhere else, we really don't care. So who cares? Like, it's not something we have to deal with. And the Canadian population doesn't care as much just because we don't care. It's not us, and it's, often it's Indigenous people anyway, so who cares, right? When you think that how many Indigenous cities were guaranteed water in like 1970 that still don't have clean drinking water in Canada, and this is like the government is supposed to do this. Or even with the Mi'kmaq fishermen, they were told many years ago, at least a decade ago, that the DFO, Department of Fisheries, had to come up with a plan for Mi'kmaq fishermen, and they just didn't do it. They just didn't do it. That's it. And so the Mi'kmaq fishermen are still being arrested for lobster fishing and having their buildings burnt down in the hands of white people. So in part, you like to say, hey, this doesn't happen in Canada, but it totally happens in Canada. And Canadians don't care because it's Indigenous peoples. So what would I say about this book? Should you read it? I think yes. You should read The Devil's Curve by Arno Kopecky, especially if you're Canadian, especially if you have any illusion that Canada is this amazing country that treats everybody well. I'm not sure that we are, really. That's it. A good book that went with it is The Color of Law, which I talked about in last week's video, or also The Fish That Ate the Whale. It looks at it from the side of what's his name, Samuel Zamuri, who started banana farming, banana plantations, and contributed to a lot of the bad stuff you'd read in this. So they actually talk about the 1930 banana massacre, which I will probably talk about in the future, which was partially how we get cheap fruit. That was about, we wanted cheap fruit in North America. And so governments murdered people for us to have cheap fruit. That's it. If you liked the video, thumbs up below. If you loved it, you can subscribe. You hit the bell because I'm supposed to say this. I'm a YouTuber. But honestly, turn off your notifications. You don't actually want them. I don't have notifications on because I don't want notifications all the time from YouTube. Schedule your time. Come back and watch my videos regularly. Other ways to support the channel. Become a YouTube member. There's a link somewhere. You can say super thanks if you like this here. You can join me in Discord. There'll be a link below. Take one of my courses on Skillshare. There'll be links to all of them below, but if you go to curtismchale.ca/Skillshare, it'll just take you there, and I get some affiliate fees from it, or buy the book with my Amazon link. That's it. Have a good one. Try to behave yourselves.